What was that for you while you thought, okay, you want to create a place, a foundation, a museum, not only for the arts, you had a very specific definition of what you wanted to create?
I think it's in some ways very close to your own path in that I was fortunate to live in a family that was very intuitive. They were I don't really use the word psychic because they didn't watch themselves be psychic.
I keep on saying that whatever I do, if I'm a creator, if I create anything I make, I haven't gone to an art school. It is how I've grown up with her. How we would in India, we would go to small tailors, and she loved clothing and she loved fashion.
Well, Chakura, what I think is that you chose that womb. You dwelled inside your mom for that time, and then she fed you in this other way.
Welcome to the podcast, Rebecca. I'm very, very excited to have you.
Oh, I'm so happy to be with you, Charuka.
We've already speaking about so many things, and I didn't want to miss all of those things. That's why we jumped in the conversation. But I want to introduce you as the artistic and the creative director of American Visionary Art Museum, which is extremely nuanced in the sense of a museum. I didn't know we don't have as such in India, and I haven't seen as much. America's official museum for visionary and self-taught artists and intuitive artists. This speaks to me on so many levels that I've already told you, and I want to hear from you. What is this story about?
Well, first off, you have something wonderful in India, and I got to meet him. He came with his one son and his wife, Padma Shri Naik Chand from Chandigarh, from the Rock Garden, had a vision. And he did it in private on state land in the woods. And then he was discovered, and they were going to demolish it. But the Indian authorities said, "Oh no, this is wonderful," and they actually gave him a platoon of military soldiers to help make what is today the Rock Garden. Uh,
It is one of the very popular destinations. Used to be specifically when I was growing up.
yes, and of course, it's next to the Taj Mahal, the most visited site, and it was the dream of this.
I've grown up there.
Yep, I went to open a festival there of Raw Vision magazine, and
Oh wow.
but it was after Nate and his wife and son had already visited me, and he saw how the our main building is covered in mirrored mosaic, and it is the largest program for apprenticing incarcerated teenagers in the United States.
Okay.
So he was so moved by the beauty of mirror, and he then started using a broken mirror in his bathrooms that he later built. So I just
Wow.
so much admiration for Nick Chand, and so glad as a little girl, you had that wonder of going in and the waterfall with the beautiful maidens pouring in the jugs of water that come down. No, I'm a huge fan. So everywhere around the world are people who may not even think of themselves as artists, but they're compelled to get up every morning, whether they ever get in a gallery or anybody ever sees it, to make something from, you say, from their heart and their dreams. It's usually a utopia. It's rebuilding the Garden of Eden in the backyard. And I just, for me, what's so inspirational is often artists who have had great trauma in their lives. And remember, Nick Chan and his family had the partition, experienced the partition, yet when you go to the rock garden, you see Sikhs, you see devout Muslims, you see the world on stage welcomed into this beautiful dream that Nick Chand had. So I didn't share with you something, but I really can't wait. This is all new information to you. So I was explaining to you that I knew when I did my great mystery show that I wanted to speak about the transplanted hearts that people receive from unknown donors and how their personalities would often change in very specific ways, later found out to be attributes of the heart of their donors. So I already knew I was going to write about that. But I read scientific magazines all the time, the latest research.
Oh, wow.
Because for me, that's another form of creativity to discover, to be so in love with understanding this world that you want to learn from nature, you want to learn from everything, right? So I'm reading
Past, present, future.
you're gonna love this, okay? So because of the name that you have, art to hearts. So our human hearts. It turns out there was a researcher down in Queensland, Australia, who only like 5 years ago discovered all of our human hearts have taste bud receptors in them. Not
Really?
Yes, exactly half of the amount that's in our tongues, but not for sweet, not for salty, only for bitterness. Our human hearts contain taste bud receptors for bitterness. Well, why would that be? It turns out when we're full of grief, when we're full of anger, when we're full of jealousy, all the negative emotions, our bodily secretions become slightly more acidic. And what happens is, as the blood passes through the heart, the taste buds for bitterness alone, not sweet, not salty, bitterness, pick it up and they contract. It contracts. So, if for many years, when people who were very healthy had great hearts, they'd been to their doctors, their heart was great, and then they lost a child or some other great devastation, they would sometimes die 2 years later. And they would have an autopsy, and the heart was worn out. The healthy heart in 2 years got worn out. And they now think that the mechanism was because of these taste buds for bitterness. And so we have these metaphors. Oh, she's a sweetheart, right? And they talk about bitter hearts and sweethearts. We intuit that that actual fact that our human hearts have taste buds. So I paired that with a quote that we can't find the attribution of, but I loved it, and it said that our hearts are wild creatures. That's why.
Oh my goodness, love this line.
Are you ready? Okay, so
It also sounds so much like women who run with the wolves.
yes, but the full quote is, "Our hearts are wild creatures. That's why our ribs are cages."
Cages. Oh my goodness, I love that.
Isn't that the most beautiful metaphor?
This is so beautiful.
So I put that in my essay with all of this research, both on the transplanted hearts that gifted someone, and in the case of people who died a violent death, there were people who described who the murderer was and what they were wearing and the whole circumstance. So our memory. So you were telling me about how much you enjoyed that our museum, our National Museum, the American Visionary Art Museum, is dedicated to the role intuition plays in creative invention of all sort. And it turns out that in Germany, there's the famous Max Planck Institute, and a researcher on human intelligence named Dr. Zenzer found that there were 8 distinct forms of our human intelligence, and our IQ test only attested 2 of them. So but this is the great part. He concluded that after all this study on human intelligence, that the highest form of human intelligence is intuitive intelligence.
I completely stand by that.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I know we're already kindred spirits, you and me. Yeah. So
I feel like how much I have felt this so much in my life, and I shared this on Instagram a quote yesterday also, where I feel like as artists, as any creators, we build this muscle of so intuitive decision making, where you're doing a creative act, you don't know where you're being guided, you don't know what you're making, you are just being intuitively guided, and we try to trust that intuition more and more, and we become better with it. I can feel this difference in my own life. The more I create intuitively, the better I feel aligned as a person. And the more I do it in my creative practice, the easier it becomes for me to do it in beyond that, because I know that it's not, it's, if my body is telling me if there's this ink, I know I got to hear it.
Yes, you are so, and you're telling me that you're doing more writing now too. And, but so I'm going to back up and say something about our museum that I want you to understand. So I told you I created 41 original exhibitions, 27 of them thematic. And what I tried to do was identify the great powers that have always influenced human beings, whether it's religion, food, war and peace, government, money, any form of and touch, sex. So all the great influencers on our human existence throughout time, not just now. Think of this: touch can be the most healing, the most
Absolutely.
the most kind, the sweetest, the most just
Grounding.
ground, life-giving, nurturing thing. It can be the most debasing, the most destructive, the most injurious thing. Anything, all the great powers, religion, sex, food, anything, are never intrinsically good or bad. And that goes
Yeah, or bad. Absolutely.
because remember, Hitler used the degenerate art show to demonize other people. And do I think that all artists are noble and only think great? No, they're human beings, and they're as bad and as good as anybody else. So what I look for is a beauty of spirit that infuses everything. And in fact, our I wrote a definition of art that goes back to the most ancient prolific art makers. Did you know that the ancient Greeks, the ancient Egyptians, the New Guinea tribesmen who were very artistic, the Hopi indigenous, they never had any word in their language for art. That meant well
I read that.
made or beautifully performed. And
Yeah.
how they did all of life, how they
But that's even true today. Don't you think so? Specifically, if you come to India or different parts of the world. I didn't call myself an artist for a really, really long time. And even today, when I meet so many artists who've been creating, I didn't come from a degree, I didn't come from an art school. And I had never met an artist in my life before I actually decided to. I didn't go to a museum, I didn't know a gallery, but I had been creating all my life. But for me, that wasn't art. I was just having fun. And also growing up in India and being in a patriarchal setup, being a woman or being a girl, it was very common. I may enjoy it then more, but everybody had was crafty, glittery, or was making something. It wasn't something exceptionally different or good or something that I had to call myself as an artist. It was after I had failed at so many things at life, I felt like I was meant to make. I was meant to make. So I studied fashion and I started a fashion business and I closed it down because I said I want to make my by my hands. I don't know. I have to close this business down because I do enjoy making fashionable clothes, but I'm not making them. I had this so much sense of urge that I knew I was meant to do something from my own hands and nothing else. And that is when I thought, okay, maybe there's something called being an artist. Maybe I can make money from it. And I'd been making from my hands for so long. So I mean, when I hear you, I feel like, oh my God, if I would have known this, let's say 10 years ago, I would be like, oh my God, the questions I had. And I'm sure there's so many people who feel they're not artists because, oh, but also if you look at it, like, ancient countries like India, we've been a place of makers all through and through. Like when I saw photos of the museum, I wish to see it in person soon. But when I saw the photos of the museum, I was like, this is something that feels like this is what a lot of times India feels when you're going on the street, you're going to somebody's house. It's so crafty, like creative, like it's so intuitive and creative, and it felt like this so much that we undermine in our own selves. I don't know if that makes sense.
I did a year-long exhibition, I think it was my 5th, called Treasures of the Soul, Who is Rich? And the question, who is rich, is talked about in called Teachings of the Fathers. And the wise answer, it could be Teachings of the Mothers, the wise answer is the few who are content with their portion. And I had artists from who may not even think of themselves as artists, but had made these amazing environments with almost nothing. With almost nothing, they saw possibility. So what does genius do? Genius sees possibility and connection where others don't in the everyday. And you're saying India has this rich tradition that can't be just duplicated, where you have so many makers and who do it with love, and they also do it with need, and they have that sense that they're. Uh, I have so many Indian artists that I have admired, from the singing scroll artist, to Sabra Khan, who does work to the female goddesses, even though he's a Marazi. And so he's not. He's demonized by fellow Muslims for always being the traditional musicians in Hindu goddess temples. So but I expect so many wonderful things from you, not only now witnessing what you are about, but to I want you to have so much joy in the path you have found your way to, and it makes all the traumas that you have had. It's You're becoming an alchemist, in that you are transforming the pain and the difficulty into something that can help heal and uplift others. And I so thank you for that.
These are so kind words. Thank you so much. I really like, I think, I want to ask you a question. Well, we're also speaking about intuition, artists, makers. There's also this foundation that you set this up in 1984, if I'm not wrong.
I had the idea in 1884.
What at that point, what was that like? I shared with you why I had this flipping point where I felt like I had to be an artist, like I had to be a maker. I didn't care about if I sell or don't sell, gallery, non-gallery. I don't care that about that. Even today I still make the making, and it's not for social media. I have a desk anywhere. Like, this is a switch flip. What was that for you while you thought, okay, you want to create a place, a foundation, a museum, not only for the arts? You had a very specific definition of what you wanted to create. And as insane as it may sound, I think it's solidified a little bit now, where people understand there's a term called intuitive, like, or being a self-taught artist is just taught. But at that point, what was your driving force to create a foundation like this and create a space like this, or something from your own personal influences that has brought you here?
I think it's in some ways very close to your own path, in that I was fortunate to live in a family that was very intuitive. They were I don't really use the word psychic because they didn't watch themselves be psychic, but I used to have, like, wild birds would land on me when I was little, and I could hug a deer and it wouldn't run away. And my parents were had great senses of humor, but they had a very intrinsic spirituality. And so I always was fascinated by stories of, whether it was like Madame Blavatsky or Edgar Casey, of people who had that ability to bring forth new thoughts and understandings by listening within. Not by I'm not anti-academic, but so much of art that pours through an academic attrition tradition looks has so much similar. They're making something mechanical some way. So it's even farther than this. I say, how we have young children in our families, and let's say they learn to sing some song that's cute, and at family parties, people push them out to sing this little song. That's one thing, and they could be cute, etc. But what I want is to come across that child singing to themselves in the woods, that has no idea that you're there. There's that I'm looking for that level of purity, which is just between you, quite frankly, and like Creator, the Great Spirit, you know? And I find that that has a beauty to it. Um, I used to joke that I'm looking for artists, not looking for me, you know, because it was like, oh, and this, you know, and I'm like, okay, well, I hope that made you happy. So I work thematically because I try to, I do these huge exhibitions that are like almost like plays that have all the great quotes from humanity of every culture you can imagine that have wisdom on that subject. Then I look at the science. What does science have to say about that? You know, and then I find out who are my heroes that are still alive that are working in this field. Like when I did the called food, was it called Yum? The history and fantasy and future of food, right? And so I honored Carrie Fowler and his wife Amy Goldman Fowler, who created the Global Seed Vault because there's like 124,000 different varieties of tomatoes alone, and our culture, yeah, I mean, people have no idea, and for me, they're like works of art that the genetics of them will never be replicated. It's one of a kind, right? And so he thought to save that because what happens is there are like, I don't know, 15 varieties of tomatoes that commercially travel well in a truck and have a good shelf life. So we end up, you know, cultivating those, and the other things can die out. So I thought that's a great work of art. So I look for people who, you know, Mother Teresa said, we can do no great things, only small things with great love. And so this is something. So Vincent Van Gogh, who you know only sold what two paintings at most in his lifetime, um, wrote to his brother Theo, who kind of kept him in food money, and he said, huh? He
I read his letters. I think they're very interesting.
his letters are works of art, and my favorite thing that we
Yeah. I think, yeah, absolutely.
is, yeah, I know we're kindred spirits, you and me. So up as a headline in big letters at our museum, I put the quote that is so kindred to yours. He said, "The more I think, the more I feel that there is nothing more truly artistic than to love people." Because if we're only making objects, if we're like, oh, and that's sold at Sotheby's, you know, for this, and look, I did something so similar, like, you know, really, is that what you're spending your life on? And you're not. You're doing something wonderful with this podcast to in blow on the embers of people's hearts, to connect them, and maybe their way won't be to make art per se, but maybe they will make the most glorious small garden anyone has ever seen. Maybe it's in the way that they love people. I want you. There's an incredible woman you should interview. Uh, uh, that is lives in England now, but her name is Sue Kreitzman. Her website is 90s, or late 80s. It's Kreitzman, Kreitzman. So prolific. And she, all the young designers now in London, like, you know, love her like an auntie, you know. And so she has this color walk where everybody, designers and just regular people, can put on all the colors they love most, and they walk like a parade to Spitalfields Market, Fields Market in London, once a week. But go on her website, and she was late,
Okay, I'm going to do that.
and she was you know, a chef, and she had recipe books during her youth. You know, wasn't making art, but now she is prolific to the nth degree, and just an inspirational woman. I can give you lots of women that I so admire.
Oh my God, I'm taking lots of notes from you. Lots of notes from you.
Another person, oh, well, it's two, the foremost photographers of Africa who spent 50 years of their life filming African cultures, which are very, you know, non-generic. They're very distinct and different before they disappeared. It's Carol Beckwith and Angela Fisher. And when from the moment you will love them because I melted when I met Carol first, and she a voice quality very similar to mine. I just her photographs are uh, what they have done is much more than photographs. They've preserved and documented cultures that otherwise would be lost to humanity.
Lots. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll give you a list when we're off air.
I I would love that. There's an interesting story I think that you would really like. I don't know. So I recently had a trip. I don't know if you know about the place called Haridwar. This is a religious place in India where, when anybody who passes away, specifically if you're coming from Hinduism, I practice Hinduism. And after my mom's passing, I didn't go for the first time because this this format is followed by the boys of the family. And until 2 years back, I think 1.5 year back, I and with my partner, we'd gone to Haridwar, and it's become Rishikesh Haridwar. It's become a place for of solace for me. I feel very connected to God, and I find a lot of positive energy. And something tickled me, and I was like, I want to go back to this place where I had only after my mom's demise I'd known that for so there is this whole practice in India that's been for centuries, where we this is you'll go to these traditional lanes. These are very small people, and you'll tell someone around that area, in the market area, you'll tell people, I am this, my name is Charuka, and I come from this family, and I'm based out of this city, and I'm looking for someone to tell me my family history. And every family is divided into bunch of, it's like a whole tree, and this whole systematization that I just couldn't even comprehend. So they told me, okay, this is your caste, and this is something you should go from here to here. This is this person. There's this pandit who'll help you and know who your family is. I went there. There was this pandit sitting, who was, I don't know, fifth, seventh, eighth generation pandit of the same, who's been taking care of our family records. And our family record does not mean me or small little family. It means 100,000 lakhs of people who come under that tree. And he opened a book, and it was like old vintage rolls of papers, and they were like 200 years old, and they've survived partition, they've survived all things that we can imagine, the floods, like. And he showed me where my grandfather had come, and he had brought his father's ashes. And in India we have a religious practice of you know um, uh, you know putting the ashes in the water in the Ganga river. And so I saw how in one whole book there was this. I still have it in my phone, where he told me what my date, exactly the date, the signature, when my grandfather came with the ashes of his father came with the ashes of their father, when they came ashes with the ashes of their brothers. And it was, I knew 10 generations beyond, and they could tell me 20 more, where even where pre-partition, my parents, my family came from Pakistan, which city in Pakistan, how many villages did they move. And I couldn't comprehend on how artfully, like, how this is so much like this creation and managing this and ancestrally passing this down. It was no less than an artful experience. It's like, I feel art also, either you share something or it shares something with you. Like, if I have something to say, I am forced to make. I have no other way. Like, I am forced to make. I have to say something. Or art to me is when it evokes something to me. I feel something, even if it's a rock or if it's an experience like this. And I was like, I don't know. I just wanted to share this story with you. I feel like you will find it very interesting.
I want you to know that I raised my children reading the comic books, from the grandfather series on all the kind of the characters from Bhagavad Gita, and but I know how to do RT. I know how to make ghee. I can sing Meva Mata. So I love the beauty in the traditions of anything that honors the infinite in the best we can in every culture. So I did an exhibition dedicated to the poet Rumi, Jahailuddin Mawani Rumi, who is he was the first Sufi, and first whirling dervish. was from his love of God was so great that he started to spin in that ecstasy, right? So and what he speaks a lot about being at getting to the point spiritually where you're neither male nor female, you're neither Jew nor Muslim, not Christian, or you are like naked in front of your original creator. But your experience of finding this rich ancestral history, because I can't imagine your pain when your mother died and only the boys were the ones to go escort her body to the Ganges, right? Really crazy. And yet you all had a female president that we've never had. I mean, a prime minister, in Indira Gandhi that
We had. Yes.
so there's these contrasts within your tradition. But I love the person you are so much. I'm so glad to meet you today.
Same here. When you talk about when we were speaking about womanhood and when we were speaking about womanhood and women, I don't know if you know about Shiv in India. Shiv goes by a lot of names. Shivji is something I truly practice and I truly believe in. So there's Shiv and Shakti. It's the feminine energy and the masculine energy, both that come together to form Shiv. It is the existence of the Shakti that makes the possibility of Shiv. And I, in my own personal practice, in my own art practice, I explore the idea of Shakti, who is Shakti, and what is masculine energy with the feminine energy, and can both of them exist without each other, and how do they come together? And I feel like this is how we look at gender is so singular versus our experiences. I think could really help us navigate, are we in a masculine energy or are we in a feminine energy, and how they both come together.
You know what's so funny? We have all these legal forms, I'm sure you have there, where they ask you, are you male or female? And I always write over it divine because I just, like, really? I don't know. I very much feel, I'm a mother. I have, children, I'm sure that could be your grandmother, and uh, but I'm very aware of when we were little kids that we just had that sense of us and the divine. Correct? We weren't like, oh, I'm a little girl loving God. No, it's this intimacy that doesn't have boxes. So when I did the All Faiths Beautiful from atheism to Zoroastrianism, respect for diversity of belief, I did it after 9/11 because so many, all Muslims were being demonized in the United States at the time. And I wanted to show the beauty of that Islam also had a beautiful, even the word spoke of peace. It doesn't mean that practitioners of every religion I can think of don't mess it up and actually do horrific things. But it was such an amazingly positive exhibition with the most beautiful thoughts from every spiritual tradition you can imagine. And many years ago, I'm not like they said I was that I had been King Janaka. Is it Janaka? I don't know if the thing that in a past life, and I didn't even know who that was. But I love goodness and beauty, and I see it in animals. I saw your dog made a cameo appearance, and I'm a big dog lover too. I featured
I love animals.
and we're talking about the power of intuition. And they found that they were using Labrador retrievers to be able to smell skin cancer in people, and they were. This is really interesting. They were like 98% accurate, but in some people that all of our tests could not see that they had any skin cancer or any kind of cancer at all. Some of the dogs would say, "No, no, no, this person does." And looked 5 years later; those were the people who had developed it. The joke was take the sample to the lab and set, like laboratory retriever, not the lab, the scientific lab. But
I love the joke as well.
Yeah, yeah. But even remember in 9/11 where when the planes hit the tall towers, there was a man who worked in the tall towers with a seeing eye dog. He was blind, and the seeing eye dog got through the heavy smoke, got him out to safety, and then got him seated in a safe place, and then went back in and led. I think it was over 120 some people out through the dense smog where they couldn't see to safety, and to the point where he burned all the pads off of his paws. Were just gone from the heat of that attack, and you know that kind of love and fidelity that can come. See, I
Can only become from animals.
yeah, yeah, it comes from a source, one source. And so I try to, uh, Dorothy McLean, the psychic intuitive at Findhorn in northern Scotland, she said, unity does not mean uniformity, each to his own strength, right? And so what we have to do is just, transcend anything that boxes you in and say, no, you are this divine creature. You are this, you come from one source. And with that spark of life, you have the opportunity to create greater loving kindness and more wonder on this earth in the time that you're here. And no matter what you've done before that you messed up or whatever, doesn't matter. Because at any point you can choose to tap in like you do to that still small voice within and to bring through your own way. It doesn't have to be a work that can hang on a wall or whatever, but you can make this beautiful earth that we were given through no work of our own, right? Well, all we've done is mess it up. Anything, we
Absolutely.
right? We can try to make our corner of the world the best. So I'm very excited to follow you and what your next steps will be in life.
Thank you so much. Okay,
You'll do Arts Cafe where the handwork of women from all over can be showcased and mothers, and it could be
I love that idea.
I think that, and with the most beautiful, all the cakes and the pastries made with such love, the food becomes prasad.
Oh, India has one of the best food to offer, I feel like. It's that is what I think India is. If I were to ever say anyone, and I keep saying to my friends, I'm like, when you come to India, I'm going to feed you. There's this so much love in food that we share. It does not matter where you eat, and our mother's food and the way we are so crafty with our food and how homely it feels and I feel like this is another thing that I feel ever since my mom's passing away. I love food. I love my mom's food. But ever since my mom's passing away, I was never a very like pro kind of I knew how to cook. I would cook, but not somewhere it felt like a soulful connection. And my mom was an excellent cook, and she would feed me with like, because I was somebody who would really enjoy eating food, so she would wait for me like, what is that I want to eat, and I would keep telling her, I want you to make it and things like that. Since her passing, I think even till today, it's been over 3 years. I feel like I haven't fed myself. Like I've eaten, but my soul hasn't felt that way. But if there is any point I feel like I want to connect, like, and it's not something that I thought I would, but I started making because I wanted to eat food made by her, and she's the one who's taught me. But when I started cooking, and I realized, and I'm very intuitive while I cook because I don't know. I just feel like there's only one image in my mind, how my mom, it's like when I'm making the food, it is my mom who's making the food, not me. And I feel like there's this, like, I'm being guided by something that is beyond me. Like I'm being, it's and I have never felt that way before her, and now I feel like it's become this point of um it's like when I'm painting or when I'm making art, I don't know, I'm just going with the flow. And that is what has been happening with me when I cook, and I feel like it is not God who's been guiding me, or it's my mom who's been guiding me. It's so intuitive and it feels so creative, and my mom, I think, was one of the most creative people I know. And I feel like that is how, like, your intuition becomes a part of you and part of everything that you do.
Well, it's a way of loving the essence of your mother in a way that can uh, never be taken away. Um, I wanted to read for you. I did an exhibition called Love, Error, like a mistake, Error and Eros, Love Profane and Divine. And we looked at all the different paths of love, I mean, from every tradition. And there's a beautiful saying. This is dedicated. What is your mother's name? What was your mother's name? Sandita with a D? Sandita? Okay, Sandita. This is for who, and we thank. Oh, okay. This is interesting too. The only distinctly thing that women have is a womb, and in the all the sacred languages, in Hebrew it's called rechem, and in Islam it's rahim. And guess what? The word for compassion in both languages comes from the word for womb. Word for compassion comes from this distinctly, and it is considered compassion, this divine attribute, right? So, what is a womb? It's not a prison. A womb is a vessel that nurtures and protects and then releases. And then
When you're ready.
for the womb of the world, the atmosphere, we go from womb to womb. And I just love that. So but listen, this is a great thing. This is dedicated to Sandita. It says, there are 10 strong things in the world, say the rabbis. Rock is strong, but iron cleaves it. Fire melts iron. Water extinguishes fire. Clouds bear aloft the water. Wind drives away the clouds. Humans withstand the wind. Fear unmans the man. Wine dispels fear. Sleep overcomes wine. And death sweeps away even sleep. But strongest of all, is loving kindness, for it defies and it survives even death. So I'm sure your mom is right with you when you make those things that you love, and maybe you mean it. Maybe your cafe filled with art and craft is Sandita's, you know?
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I keep on saying that whatever I do, if I'm a creator, if I create anything I make, I haven't gone to an art school. It is how I've grown up with her. How, we would in India, we would go to small tailors, and she loved clothing and she loved fashion. And, we would just bring clothes together and stitch them together. And I use a lot of embroidery in my work. And that's also how I feel like that is one way I connect with, or I'm taking that forward, is because when I use embroidery, I'm feeling like I'm just sitting with her and I'm doing this mix and match. Oh, this is going to look this, or it's just how life unfolds in itself and guides you. Like, I didn't know when I was 5 years old or 6 years old that when I'll be 27, I'm going to lose my mom. And thereafter, everything I've done before that is going to become a guide for me to follow that path in my life. And I keep on looking at it. I'm like, oh my God, I wouldn't have been able to do this if I wouldn't have been able to, if I didn't do that with my mom, or if that didn't happen.
Well, Chakura, what I think is that you chose that womb. You dwelled inside your mom for that time, and then she fed you in this other way. And that beauty of her soul can never be taken away from you. That belongs to you in such a unique way. And I think that when you give thanks and gratitude uh, to that of all the moms in the world, you had this special one for you, just for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So just thank you for sharing a bit of her. Even the great physicist who was totally, totally self-trained, Ramanujan. He attributed his brilliant formulas to Namagiri, the household goddess. You know that. And he actually wrote them on toilet paper when he sent them, the only paper he had around, to off to England. And this is the fascinating part. Not only did the Oxford, and at that time there was a lot of prejudice, look at this work. Oh, it was brilliant. Did you know that there were some formulas that were never able to be physics formulas translated for what they meant at the time? And today, 60 years later, they're considered the greatest physics interpretation of black holes. There was no mathematics for black holes. So when again, the fact that he didn't say, "Oh, I'm a boy who's really smart in math." No, it's the household goddess Namagiri that gave me this precious understanding to share with humankind.
I love that. Tell me something. I'm very fascinated about how do you find ideas and artists and themes that you want to curate for the museum, and what is your process? And I'm sure it is not the usual one, because it's not by, oh, who's holding off more, who's demand and who's supply, who's branding. And no, I'm sure it is as intuitive as it sounds. Tell me more about that.
You're absolutely right. In fact, I knew the first 11 exhibitions thematically before I opened the first door. And we keep our thematic shows up for at least 11 months because there's so much work to put together and so immersive for the visitor. So, what? Thank you for asking that. It's You have to remember the art world, because there's a lot of money in contemporary art, is very oriented to what's sold and what's being shown and this and that. I could care less because that's being taken care of. I don't need to be worried with that. So I pray every single exhibition, and I don't ask my friends, to believe in God or anything. But for me, I realize that there is a supreme intelligence who knows what will be happening in the world at the time that my new exhibition, we are never come to visit us in September into the beginning of October because we're switching out shows. Okay, so when that knows what will be happening in the next year. So I beg in my inner voice to understand what will be the greatest help to humanity at that time. And without fail, an idea comes. And sometimes it's an idea, and I only have 9 months to try to curate it. I mean, it's really intense. But once I know that I've heard the right thing to do or understood, it almost like self-assembles. It's amazing. So let me tell you this: I have some atheist staff who I love, but they believe in my intuition to the point where they've said, "What did you pick this year?" Because what has happened when I did Holy H2O, Fluid Universe, as a theme. Okay, I got that in 2003. When we opened in the fall of 2004, what happened? There were more Class 5 storms than in recorded history. Then the tsunami in Indonesia, the greatest loss of life in our recorded history. And then the last week was the inundation of New Orleans by Katrina, the storm. And in between, the London decided to run a mass spectrometer reading on the public water. Most municipalities are just always checking, because it's recycled, that the water supply doesn't have poop in the water, doesn't have, and so that's what they're set up to clean out, all the, but they're not, to their horror, when they ran a mass spectrometer on the water of London, they discovered that all from 60 years of women peeing out birth control hormones from the birth control pills, that had reconcentrated in the water. And then they understood why the male fish in the River Thames throughout London aren't reproducing, because of the body burden of all the female hormones. But then they found that from people who take Prozac, all the small molecule neuroleptics that are used in psychiatry and depression and all of that, that comes out through the human urine and reconcentrates in the filtration water. But our systems are not designed to take out hormones, nor are they to take out neuroleptics. So it reconcentrates. And we're like, oh my gosh, look what people are drinking, right? And so everything had to do with water that year. So when I did the art of war and peace toward an end to hatred, we opened 9/11 happened. When I did parenting and art, and like I when it came to me that I'm going to look at the power of parenting, it was called Parenting and Art Without a Manual: The Good, the Bad, the Horrific, Sublime. And I had artists who told the most fascinating stories, good, bad, and ugly, about their love and their torture and whatever else happened. And said that's another example, and I had in my permanent collection, I had these a family. Made out of piano interior parts because people move so much today. They don't want to take pianos with them, so they junk them. There are more pianos that are thrown away than you can imagine because people, you know. And so this artist takes those parts and he made the family and the smile on the child were from the keys. It made the teeth, right? And all the interior parts, the wooden, hammers and things that made these gorgeous sculptures. But what did I pair it with? I paired it with a quote from Michael Levine, who said, "Parenting makes you no more a parent than having a piano makes you a pianist." Isn't that brilliant? So you see, it's this thing between thought, the wise, noble thought, right, and the works of art and the words of the artists themselves, the testimonies on the subject. So I hate the way bios are written on artists. Oh, they studied here, studied there, they showed here, they showed. I never put a right. I say like the stuff that if they were your best friend, what they would want you to know about them.
I can't wait to visit. I truly can't wait to visit.
Well, you can come stay with me, okay? You don't have to pay any hotel. Get here, and I'll pick you up at the airport, and you stay with me.
I'm packing my bags and coming straight to the museum. I'm sure I'm going to have a blast. I've looked at the images and I'm blown away.
Oh, well, now you understand a little bit more the depth of the feeling. Um, uh, because again, we always default to like the power of intuition. And even if you've had
Yeah.
vast training, I've looked at where, Einstein was looking at a street lamp in a foggy rain when it dawned on him E equals MC squared.
Yeah.
He understood. So, I'm looking what I call the aha moment.
Yes.
And I did this thing on visionary experience in general. How do people
Okay.
fresh ideas? And if you look at the most famous, not that I admire them all, but the moguls, that create new industries, whether it's Apple, they never finish college. They may get into Harvard,
Yes.
they never finish because they're so burning with their own ideas, right?
Own idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that they need to produce and be creative. So, again, I'm not anti-academic, but what I'm saying is that, actually, I don't know if I can find it fast enough, but Oppenheimer, I'm going to give you the quote from the top of my head, the creator of, you know, atomic, yeah. He studied the Bhagavad Gita for the hidden understandings, as did Niels Bohr, many other physicists. But he said, there are children playing out in the streets who could answer some of my greatest problems in physics because they have modes of understanding that I long ago lost. So it's not saying we should be childish. There's a word called neoteny, which means retaining childlike qualities of wonder, curiosity, enthusiasm, delight.
Possibilities.
Yes, exactly. So I can't wait till I get.
Bhagavad Gita, I think, is one of the most. It's something I love to read in the morning. I love to read before bed. It is, I think, one of the most profound texts one can ever read for sure. I didn't know it for a very long time myself, but ever since I've had it in my life, I don't think it's not a book for sure. It's way more than that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and just even, the dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna,
Krishna, Arjun, yeah,
and again, that explodes this idea of kind of the illusion of life. And he says, you're already dead, which is another way of saying you're almost already, alive. And I do believe, in the great yugas, almost all the indigenous people, and now the scientists have borne out that, we surface creatures of Earth, there have been five extinct, um, um, episodes on the earth. And then the Mother Earth, Gaia, reinvents herself, and whether dinosaurs or whatever. We know there have been five different extinction events on Mother Earth. And when I know, I've done exhibitions about, human trafficking, which for me is, one of the most horrific things. But so I have something on genocide, but up now with the embroideries of, that you will love, of Esther Krinitz, who made these 36 embroideries. She survived the Holocaust, but she had such a love of nature. She wanted her children to see. She had no photos of her home. She didn't have running water or electricity, but they were so happy as kids before the Nazis actually came in on horseback, because it was very rural Poland. And in that show, I look at what we did to Native Americans. I look at the genocide of what happened between the Hutus and the Tutsis in Rwanda, and I tried to find what is behind genocide throughout time and place. And I came up with a quote. I came across the quote by a guy named, Terry Pratchett, who said, "Evil begins when you begin to treat people as things." Meaning, think about it, as sex objects, as property, as disposable workforce, work them till they die and get rid of them. And it's so true. And Martin Buber wrote, I loved his I thou versus I it. And when you see everybody else through the lens of being a sacred being, and you are too, you never trespass against them, because you realize, oh my gosh, they are so much more than, oh, just another person, or, oh, that's a person I can, of a different lower caste. That's why in India there's so much beauty, and then you get into these narrow confinements of either, if, not by everybody, there's all these great souls of, what gender restrictions or caste restrictions. That's why I try to champion what it is to be given the gift of life that transcends anything narrow, and gives such a opening to all of life. I don't hear you. Your sound is off. Your sound is off. Sharuka, I don't have any sound on you. Did you silence yourself by mistake?
I am so glad. I think one are already in, and there's so many new stories, so many new things I've learned from you, and I'm only excited to learn more. But thank you so much. I will wind this episode, and we'll bring you back once every time. Let's commit to this. Every time you're doing an exhibition, you come and share the story with us and tell us about your research and every new thing that you're doing, so that we all learn it together.
Well, I'm going to be retiring, and I've passed the reins over to a young, a curator. I have the most devoted employees, but I left them with the next 3 to 4 years of themes. But I won't curate, and it's hard because I'm a micromanager. Like, I picked every color of every show, every placement of every work, every quote, and but I feel I have another calling to do. So I hope by the new year, I will be permitted to do that. But please give my love to Rajiv Sethi. He should know what you're doing. I think, and he is a person who really transcends any gender as well. And just a great soul who champions the artist, including the Untouchables. When he did the Silk Road Festival, over in Washington, what he did was he brought in a group of people who are not contagious, but who had leprosy, who were art makers. Did you know that? And he brought them to the Indian embassy. You've cut out yet again. That no sound.
Wow,
Okay.
I am so amused. I think there's so many great works that go unnoticed, that are specifically when we
Yeah.
say about the arts. And I love what you're doing, because I feel like there's so many ideas, there's so many great works, just creativity, just creation out in the world that is way beyond a cubicle or a white wall. And you provided a platform that goes way beyond that, where not everybody has to feel like an artist or feel like a painter or a painter and has to hang it on a wall. It can be more than life. It can be just than a wall, or it is more life than just an outcome. And I love that. And I think a lot of artists would agree to that, because I think a lot of times when people feel creative and they take that as a profession, I think there's some kind of contradiction that starts to come in. Like, you said the academic tells you, puts you through a system and starts to help, starts to we start to question our own self. What felt natural starts to feel unusual, and you start to question yourself. And I think more and more places and more conversation about what feels I think what feels natural to you, to our bodies, to our souls, to our minds, who we are, that needs to be restored a lot more.
Yes, because you don't want to have the marketplace dictate to you. Oh, people like it when I draw chickens, you know, like and that's nice, but you don't want to define yourself in any narrow way. And for me, going back to Van Gogh, the more I think, the more I feel that there is nothing more truly artistic than to love people. I consider your mother to have been a great artist because she made.
Absolutely. I still believe that. I think for me, she's the biggest. If somebody asks me what is my biggest influence, or someone who I truly feel was very creative, I don't think I've seen anybody more than my own mom. I don't think so. I would never want to. I think for me, how in the most basic life, how in the most simple ways a person can get creative, and the way we live our lives. Um, I mean, and live that creative life, not only make something creative. And I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, and at every turn in the museum, as I said, the walls are not just gorgeous mosaics; they're the largest apprenticeship program for incarcerated teenagers. The everything has a purpose. All the entries are wheelchair accessible, so that people who use wheelchairs all come in the same way as everyone else. There's conscious thinking about how you love people at every place that I possibly can.
I love that. And I can't wait to visit for sure. As soon as I can.
All right. You keep in touch, dear Shuruka. Thank you for today. And we're dedicating this to your mother, Sandita.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sharing your work, your stories. So many beautiful analogies, and so many beautiful quotes, and I mean, so many stories. And I think I love this conversation, and I hope I'll get to learn more from you and everybody who's joined us for this episode.
Yeah, to everyone out there, and love to you. And thank you. Thank you so much, Shuruka. Today I've learned from you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Recluse this.